honored to come here to meet you and deliver my talk in front of big audience. And I also thank to the actual Mark to invite me to his class, and they got some opportunity to discuss lots of things around this world, including the America and actually the East Asia and other place, Africa, something like that. So today actually I'm gonna actually narrow down this subject into the very a specific area of the images, and this I'm gonna actually present some kind of introduction to the forthcoming my book about the Permy, the Dutch the golden age painter. That the painting, how actually such kind of painting or related to some philosophical invention of the ego, something like that. That is my main subject will be in my forthcoming book. So this might be a kind of introduction for that. So just I need actually your opinion when I talk, and your discussion on that. It might be some very insightful for me as well. Yeah. Okay. So that's why just the focus is that very simple. Just the theory is architectonic imagination, and that one, and Deleuze said something provide us such a kind of thinking prior to our own the desire, our own the identity, something like that. What is that? That is actually the Deleuze question. Deleuze question. Why is that? And the Deleuze put emphasis on desire rather than the structure. That means we got to search the body without organ, something like that. Body without organ. That means actually body is the starting point. What is that? This one is actually the Gestalt theory, and some kind of psychological theory. The body without organ means death drive, something like that. Death drive or libido. That means actually from his theory, based on the Freud or the psychoanalytic, this position. For instance, Lacan, actually very connected to Lacan, So what you talk about is the death drive give us such a kind of energy to propel our own subjectivity, our own the value system, our own the knowledge about the object. That means there is no such kind of objective perception in Deleuzian philosophy, because it's useless. That means axiomatic thing. It's kind of cutting the desire. The desire always flows, but some the objective knowledge cut the kind of flow. But this is actually a problem. In that sense, how can we actually apply this kind of Deleuzian thought into making building? How can we actually apply this theory to understand architecture? Architecture is wrong, because that is a cut the flows of the desire. We are gathered here. We just suppress our desire to go out. We can drink, we can enjoy our life, but we should study, blah blah blah. That is symbolic. There's a law, there's a regulation. But Deleuze actually try to reject all kind of regulation, in terms of what? Emancipation of desire. That is the point. Rancière criticized Deleuze. There is no such a kind of emancipation. There is no such a kind of non-representation or anti-representation. It's impossible. Very simply, we can see that difference between the Deleuze and Rancière. So the point is very simple. I already talked about the simple. Philosophy is very simple. Of course, philosophy is a very simple one. So that one is actually, Rancière said, the regime. Regime. That is very complicated, the term. I said the regime is, I think, stands for normally political regime. Ancien regime or something like that. So there is a political thing. That means for Rancière, the image is connected to what? The political. In other words, politics. Rancière actually divided, put some distinction between politics and police and the political. The political is something cannot be represented in terms of politics. It's not the Ramsey's own. It's a kind of the Aristotle, the Greek philosopher. He actually regarded politics as kind of police to control people, control such kind of the demos. That one is actually what Aristotle called politics. But Ramsey revised this concept and reject this kind of politics as a real politics. What he tried to say is that the political is always already resist the politics. That means actually something like that. Occupy Wall Street, blah blah. Well, you can see the Arab Spring, or some other everywhere riots and blah blah, something like that came out. For instance, why is that? It's Fukuyama, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, Fukuyama announced the end of history. But still, going on. What? Something kind of demonstration, something kind of riot, something kind of protest, always coming out of this end of history. So Ramsey tried to explain why this kind of thing happened. Politics controlled everything. We got representative, the parliamentary, the system for this politics. We got very strong police. For instance, the Arab also got very strong military dictatorship, something like that. But people always resisting that one without any reason. They're just resisting. So that one is, I think, a very important thing for the Ramsey. So that's why he tried to theorize what happened to our life, something like that. And then he actually totally agreed to the Deleuze definition of life, Ramsey as well. But the thing is, Ramsey they defined the aesthetic as kind of political. That is a different thing, That means Ramsey, regarded representation as kind of, the another side of the non-representation. That means the representation always contain or hiding that kind of unrepresentable thing in it. I think this imagination, this idea is very perfectly architectonic. It's like you think about architecture. Its regime is what? It's taken structure, might be a regime. Or it's not kind of just architecture as such might be a regime. You can put some kind of institution. Or, what I mean actually is structure. Put the structure. You just you cut into actually structure now. We are sit on inside of the structure. But we did something. We are doing something now. That might be called the political. That means actually there might be some interaction between structure and people. That is actually Ramsey's idea. That is the reason why Ramsey called aesthetic as regime. For Ramsey, aesthetic is connected to image of a thought. That means life. Very interesting. So look at this. Just what I want to say is how this thing can be, this kind of presupposition can be proved. So I'm going to show you some images. What is this? This one is Pyramid. Pyramid is, painting. It's the highest, the achievement, the pyramid done when he's alive. So this one is Delft, the view of Delft. Delft, It's actually kind of, the small city in the Netherlands. That means it's a Holland. And you still, get there, with some, the train from Amsterdam. Anyway, so Delft view, look at that one. Just like what? Photos. Just like photo. We don't actually raise the question as to why just he painted this kind of landscape, because in those days landscape is popular genre. Why? They want to see the world, the bourgeois subjectivity, bourgeois ego, try to control the whole world. For instance, right side that you can see the ships. What is that? There is actually fishing boat, and over there the fishing boat, and they can. That means actually stand for kind of industry, the flourishing industry in those days in Netherlands. You know, such kind of fishing and some trading, you know, blah blah. So that's why just that item must be included into this painting. Why? The customers will see that how our the world is very abundant with this kind of items. How much we are rich or something like that. That is what really they want. Just like get a photo of your family, memorizing your that boundary of yourself, boundary of your life, something like that. Just memorizing something. So that is kind of memorizing. Is very the desire is similar to you got the photo today. That is a photo kind of thing, because they don't have any the camera in those days. They don't have any technology, so just they depended on what this kind of artist technology, for instance, the Willem Bruce, the artwork like that. This also painting, also technology. So the point is that he painted this picture, and I went to Delafut, last year, just try to find a point where the actual pyramid actually, the painted this view. That one is Delafut. This side is outside. That means that this side is actually out of the town. It's not actually Delafut. This area is not belongs to Delafut. It does not belong to Delafut. That means actually this one, this seashore is actually seashore. Seashore is a kind of a place, the traveler ride. Traveler ride. That means actually like this one. This guys, outsider from Delafut. They are not resident in Delafut. That means that this gaze, where is it this gaze? This gaze is kind of an outsider's one. That means what? Transcendental objectivity. Do you understand? We don't know whoever actually watching this scene, but I think that scene might be an ideal gaze. Ideal the person seeing this view, Delafut. That means objective, view. There might be, I think, the credit for this one is a very objective scene. So you can buy, this one is a little bit, guarantee, that kind of quality. This is a real, Delafut or something like that. So this is the way in which the Vermeer painting they produced knowledge of the objectivity or the knowledge of the the real city, real world, blah blah. So and then this one is photography thing here. So this kind of technology, the most advanced in those days, And after that, I'll show up. Yeah, the Pyramid painting is normally known as kind of beginning of the modernity or modern gaze, the birth of modern gaze. Normally they argue that the Pyramid is kind of the precursor of such modern painting. That means actually the anticipate the emerging of the photography, something like that. But this one is Korean painting. The first modern painting in Korean history. What kind of difference between the Pyramid and this painting? This self-portrait, this painter there. He studied painting in Japan. It's colonial age, so they're colonized by the Japanese imperialism. Korean peninsula was colonized by the Japanese imperialism, and a lot of the upper class aristocrat, the actual son and normally daughter is prohibited to go there. So, but some another woman will come. Anyway, so the children, the aristocrat, upper class children, they went to the actual Japan to study this kind of painting. I think you might actually the pay attention to the style, the technique. What kind of technique there? That is Impressionism. That is the first modern painting in Korean history, and the technique is Impressionist. What does that mean? We Korean don't have pyramid. To understand? We don't have any painting like a pyramid. I think that is the first evidence we can, the approved, what Wang Xie argue in terms of a regime, right? The aesthetic is a kind of regime, That means this is quite a different regime, That means modernization or development of modern aesthetic is not linear. Definitely it's not linear thing, Whatever actually aesthetic is imported to in different contexts, that stands for something regime. That's my point, by which we should understand, the Wang Xie's theory about the aesthetic. So this is very interesting painting for the, I think, the art historian, because Korean has no, pyramid style, pyramid-like painting. That means our own, the modern painting begins with this kind of Impressionism. That means Impressionism was the origin of Korean modern paintings. Not any, the Renaissance, not kind of Renaissance, not kind of pyramid, objectivism. We don't have that one. You understand that one? Impressionism is what? It's subjectivism, It's kind of, subjective, They pay attention to the function of eye. Of course, they are arguing this is objective, but actually the thing is that the subjective is a kind of mediation through which we can reach at that kind of objectivity. So that one is very important, the turning point in the history of art. So look at this one. I'm going to show you a similar one. Another, portrait. Definitely look at that. It's Impressionism, And another one. That one. It reminds us kind of noir, The one is actually the sunset. The title is Sunset. This one is the first Korean nude. Painting of nude. But very interestingly, the girl, they didn't see their face toward the actual audience. They're just hiding, because in those days still we got, the Korean Confucian tradition. That's why it's a little bit, very, I think the painter, got very brave in mind. If, drew this one, try to, persuade the girls. Who are they? They are geisha in Pyongyang. They actually know the capital. So also, they look like what? For instance, look at this one. This one typical, the Impressionist technique. And again, also this one. This one is the painting done by the first female painter in Korean history. All thing is the first one. The first female painter drew this painting. And also, definitely Impressionist style. It's kind of Murillo or something like that. It's a very Impressionist kind of thing. So, look at this. This one is actually not 18th century Korean painting. It looks like what Chinese one, because in those days we don't have any division between the China and the Korea. We got to share the same East Asian culture, same aesthetic. But this one is a little bit different from what we can see the actual traditional Chinese paintings. Also, technique definitely Chinese style, but this one seems like what? Reminds us Impressionist painting. It's drawn in actually 18th century. It's produced in 18th century. It's very early modern, But after, that means actually there are very huge gap between this painting, 18th century painting, and I show you this painting. huge gap there. You know, just I think 50 years, 5 decades only. I think counting the counting the gap, the time gap actually just in 5 decades only. But through the 5 decades, things changing rapidly like this. You know, this one changing to this one. Whole painting is gone. You know, and you can see this one actually the done by the Choi-Book. Choi-Book is a painter, Korean painter. He is avant-garde. He is born into the lower class, and he became a painter. That means that he cannot be actually the getting stable, you know, status as a painter. He is the first, you know, painter, one of the first painters selling his painting for living. That means a professional painter in Korea. The first kind of, you know, first, you know, the precursor for the selling his own, you know, painting for living. You know, that is very interesting. Anyway, you should see this one. You know, that kind of this normally painting is, you know, regarded as kind of 진경 상수. That means actual real landscape painting in Korean terminology. That means this guy painted real what? Landscape, not any, you know, ideal one, like, you know, the traditional Chinese painting. Normally, traditional Chinese painting reflecting what? Literary idea. That means normally like, you know, the pre-Raphaelites, normally the Chinese painting is kind of, you know, the visualizing such a kind of, you know, literary images. That one is actually what Chinese painting aims at. But this one is actually normally regarded as kind of real landscape painting. That means this guy tried to imitate nature. You know? So look at this one. That you know, the tree. The tree is, you know, windy. The stirring, you know, in the windy, you know, atmosphere. He tried to show up what movement of a tree, twigs or something like that. And you can see that there is a winter, very cold, you know, freezing night, and two guys is going back to home. One guy is, you know, the old man, and the other guy is the boy. And look at this, you know, the very big, you know, huge, you know, the dogs, the barking, you know. So that calligraphy, actually, that Chinese character stands for the 풍운 Ya Huin. That means actually what is that? It's a very cold night, cold winter night, you know, and a windy night. The two guys actually going back to the home. That is that actual title said. So anyway, just you know, the point is that, you know, the tree's movement. He tried to describe the movement. That is, I think, you know, kind of, you know, what can I say, latent, or kind of, you know, the potential, you know, possibility for the modern painting. It's indicating such a kind of, you know, the possibility of modern painting. It means 18th century Korean painters very interested in describing nature, describing the movement. That means kind of, you know, its own, you know, development, you know, toward modern painting. But abruptly, all thing is gone, and this you know, new style of the painting imported into where? Imported into actually Korean context, called modern painting. Do you understand? Why these things happen? You know, some, you know, nationalists argue that it's a Japanese imperialism, blah blah blah. But aesthetic is not such a thing. You know, aesthetic needs kind of, you know, improvement from the people, because that is always related to what? Practical and pragmatic purpose, as like an architecture. Architecture got such a pragmatic purpose. It's not it also an ideal, but ideal is not at the end of actually, you know, the architecture. Architecture needs kind of realization of such an idea into the real world. Painting or aesthetic also, you know, something like that. They got, you know, the utopian impulse, but they should be realizing such kind of utopian impulse into the objectivity, something like that. So this one also, you know, Turner's one,
the peeling, he tried to describe the peeling of the train. This one is train. Right thing is a train. It's like actually what is that? It's the title might be the stamp of that speed and the train, what we experienced in terms of train. So this one also regarded as kind of the beginning of modern painting in the Britain. So that means this painting tried to describe what movement of the train. That means actually this 19th century, early 19th century. That means very close to the 18th century. In those days, all global society got such a kind of desire to describe movement of nature or natural movement. This is what actually Deleuze said. Before First World War, the aim of the film, aim of the cinema, was to show up movement, image. But after the Second World War, that means in the 1960s, the cinema is turned into showing up the image of thought image, or not a kind of moving image, just the time image. That means it's a little bit similar definition. So recent in the contemporary film, contemporary cinema, what contemporary cinema tries to show up is what temporal image, time image, rather than actually the movement image. But this is very modern image according to Deleuze. What try to showing up movement image rather than time image. So as you see this one, this Chebuk's one as well. It also showing up what movement image, very similar to what the Western, for instance, the Turner tried to show up in his own his painting. But actually, you see this one. That one is a totally different technique, totally different painting. Nobody said this one is the same painting, blah blah. But what? Same idea there. It means idea is same, but technique, aesthetic technique is different. This point. So the Japanese painting, you know that. This ukiyo-e. Japanese one is actually a little bit different from what Korean painting show up. Korean painting is totally different technique. But this Japanese painting ukiyo-e, that means actually something painting seeing above. There's a literal meaning of the ukiyo-e means actually the seeing the above, seeing the landscape above. That means that. So this picture is a little bit strange. Why? As you know, like this, there is no perspective. That means actually the perspectivism, Renaissance perspective. There's no that. No the vanishing point. Just that one is typical Oriental and Chinese painting. Chinese technique is just like this one, no perspectivism. But here also Turner, destroyed that in perspective, the principle, descending from the actual Renaissance age. That one is actually innovative way to see the object, to see the world in different innovative way to actually see the world. That is actually the symbolic, the invention of the modernity. But this one, Japanese one, you can see that. Why is that? They got perspectivism. They got perspective in it. This way, the Fuji mountain is the vanishing point. What happened to that? What is happening is Japanese artists implanted Western technique into their context. What they need is kind of the mixture. Try to find out the mixture That is, I think, what Japanese regarded modernity. For Korean, modernity means what? Rupture between tradition and the new, the newness, something like that. You know, the old one and the new one. That one is for the Korean people, regarded actually new world, blah blah. Like the Descartes, Descartes, the way to think. But the Japanese are a little bit different. They got their own tradition. They want to keep their own tradition, like this one. They keep drawing, keep producing ukiyo-e. Still now, until now, they're producing ukiyo-e. You can see the ukiyo-e painter in Japan these days. And they actually, they imported this kind of perspectivism into their own, style. That's why they created this kind of very interesting painting. This one as well. This also, disposed by architectonic imagination. That means actually that one is also got the perspectivism. But you must see that they drew actually people according to their own style. It's not ukiyo-e. It's just ukiyo-e style, but the landscape is changed. The landscape following up the Western one. That means the Western meets, Japanese style. Look at this one as well. This the description of the people is actually the follow up the ukiyo-e principle, ukiyo-e regulation. So, okay, this one. So, I show what the all images on that. Okay, so I'm concluding now. Okay, so thing is that what I want to say is that what's happening, in these actually images. That means actually, if you got same ideas, if you got the same, desire, according to depending on the regime of the aesthetic, there might be some, related to socio-economic change or, any, the people's relationship or hierarchical, the social status or, democratic social status, depending on such kind of political, on the transformation. All thing is, I think, connected to this kind of regime. So, thing is, actually, if your regime is changed, as Wang Xi said, the knowledge also, changed. That means if you wanna change your, knowledge, you should change the regime. This is not a right sentence to, understand Wang Xi, because for Wang Xi, nobody can change the regime. Regime is produced by demos, produced by the politica, produced by some kind of people's movement or some kind of thing like that. It's like, produced by life or something like that. So, always life is connected, intermingled with the language and thought, language and desire, blah, blah. So, this kind of regime, I think, they produced aesthetic dimension. That means regime is not as such, the aesthetic dimension. But if I think the regime is necessary to produce that one. That means that is the point Wang Xi tried to make against the Deleuze. We need representation. If you got such an anti-representative desire, if you got such a kind of, anti-representative knowledge on the objectivity, you should get representation system, something like that. That is connected, interactive, dialectical interactive, each other. That is what Wang Xi tried to say. So, and these, images showed up how image works out, how your images work, how. Very simply, that one works in terms of regime. Regime is kind of, architectonic imaging. That means image put realization of the idea. That's why just, the Korean painter, the 18th Korean painter shared Same thing with the Turner, but he produced totally different, the aesthetic representation according to what? Chinese tradition, rather than Impressionist tradition. But after the 19th century, Korean painter, it's not very far from the 18th century. Just, I think 50 years, something like that, 5 decades. But some kind of rupture there between the 18th century and 19th century painter. There is no any kind of the overlap aesthetic dimension there. So according to this kind of evidence, we can say that changing of regime is produced what different aesthetic. Even you actually share the same idea. That means it's very important. The realization idea different from according to that regime, depending on such a kind of difference of regime. So if we got say that for instance, we got the utopian impulse, blah blah, everybody got the utopian impulse. Think about the Graham Hancock, for instance. Graham Hancock argued that we are all all human civilization got pyramid, all shared, same similar actually the architecture. That's why just we got same origin, Atlantis, something like that. We got very long time ago, ancient age, we human beings got such a very marvelous civilization. After that Atlantis is sunk into the sea, ocean. After the remained actually the escape from such that disaster to the actual continent, they are building up similar architecture. That is a little bit very interesting conspiracy theory anyway, but it just not like that. What I said. According to this kind of development of aesthetics, we can see that the regime, we can share the same idea, but the regime is actually the produce different aesthetic with this kind of same ideas. That is my point. So that's why just we can see that some kind of the cultural hybridity in every sort of multicultural, whatever we call that. Every culture might be a hybrid. In terms of the hybrid means what? Is this kind of mixed the regime or the mixed experience into the a specific representation system. The regime might be called a representation system. Law and the parliament system, representative politics, blah blah, and the education system as well. All things might be called regime. According to such a regime, aesthetic will be changed. Or otherwise, I think reversely saying, aesthetic could change regime. If you just imported different aesthetic, for instance in Korean context, then the new self-portrait, impressionist self-portrait imported into Korean context as modern painting. There's a reason why the Korean has no actually the pyramid style painting. You can't see any in the museum. If you visit Korea, try to find out. Never there. Just this one is the first one. So for Korean people needs this kind of aesthetic. For what? This is the point we start our research. This is, I think, we can find out shared interdisciplinary study for understanding culture or understanding the exchanging this kind of values or the production of the aesthetic form. We can share it for our own disciplinary studies from this point. This question, what I said, that is what Deleuze said, idea. For Deleuze, idea means question, abstractive machine. That is what? Following up such an abstract machine, our life is assemblaged, producing such an assemblage. It means what kind of idea you got, depending on what kind of idea you got, your life changed. That's what Deleuze said. And Rangsi as well agreed to that. So problem is knowledge or perception. And the regime is actually control and decided which, knowledge you should have. Otherwise, you can change that one. If you got some, I don't agree with this. This one is the first, the starting point for Rangsi of the political. I don't agree with that. If you declare that one, I don't agree with that. This agreement is producing what? Rupture between the given value and the new value. So images, this is my concluding mark, I will say it like this. Image is the very place for controversy. Why? Always image talking about, image showing up what? Such a kind of an intermingling regime. Or some kind of, tension between representation and non-representation or unrepresented. That is image. Image showing up objective while at the same time hiding unrepresented. That's why image is always controversial. There's I point that through the actual Rangsi theory and Deleuze theory, we can understand how actual theory works, giving us what thinking. This is, I think, very important. So image. That's why image is very important. Not only at the modern age, but also ancient and the medieval age as well. Image is power. Image means power. What kind of power? Power of thinking. So done. That's it.